Holy cow. You guys aren't going to believe this. I am live right now with a good friend of mine who I feel I have failed in the last few years. I completely dropped the ball, got disconnected. Don't know what happened, but I feel like a terrible friend because I just lost contact with him. I got to tell you, I'm talking today with Leo Pareja, who's currently the CEO of one of the largest real estate companies on the planet, eXp Realty.
The largest.
Are you guys officially the largest now?
Yeah.
Really? Congratulations, Leo. That is fantastic.
Single brokerage, single platform, largest brokerage on the planet.
That is fantastic. Good for you. You know, hard earned and well deserved, I got to tell you.
There are several brands that are larger, but one company, not franchise, independently owned and operated, we're the single largest.
I did not know that. That is incredible. Well, Leo, I'm just stoked to have you on, man. So let's just dive right into it. You know, it's funny because as we got started doing this, I thought, I got to catch up. I got to go back there and I got to see what's Leo been up to since you and I were doing a lot together. And I want to back up. I'm just go back into your history really quick before we dive into eXp and the market and what's going on in the industry. And there's so much I want to unpack with you. So we're gonna have to go fairly rapid fire. But I want to start with, tell us your backstory. I mean, I know you started real estate at 19. I'm just going to kind of give you some high points, and then I'd like you to fill in the details here. Started selling real estate, correct me if I'm wrong, at 19 years old. Number one agent at Keller Williams Real Estate by 28 years old. 4,000 homes sold, over 750 million in volume over 15 years. Then you started a Washington Capital Partners, which is a private lending company. And then you founded Remine, which had 80% market share and completely changed the industry from a technology standpoint. Past president of NAREP, I believe, as well. And now current CEO for the largest real estate company in the world. So talk to us, tell us, fill in some of these gaps. I want to know how you went from one to the other, because man, that's a journey, and you're not that old. You're a young guy.
Well, it's funny to hear your own highlight reel, because you know that there's a whole lot of downs in there, right? Those are just kind of like the highlights from LinkedIn or your resume. And I always want to make sure that people understand that, right? It's like, I don't care who you are. I saw a quote once during a keynote that I thought was pretty impactful that said, success is messy, right? People doing it at the highest level. You were just asking me, is text still the best way to get a hold of me? And I said, hey, it could be in bunches when I respond when the next time I'm on a plane. And so I think life has been an exercise in radical prioritization, and that's probably the common thread throughout my entire career. So I actually went to school to do web design and graphic design. I wanted to be in software, which ironically 20 years later, I did end up in software, but I chose the year 2000 to do that in, which could not have been the worst year to do. I could have graduated in 2000. That would have actually been worse. But I picked the year 2000 to become a graphic designer and a web designer. And by the middle of my freshman year, my hopes and dreams of being recruited out of college, making $150,000 a year, which by the way is like 300 grand now, 350, had started to evaporate. So I went to a college fair my freshman year of college that said, if you just get a 4-year degree, companies like WorldCom and AOL were offering me great packages, but 3 years later, before I even graduated college, they no longer existed in their current form. But I read a book because a parent's friend told me to during one of the breaks. And that book happened to be Rich Dad Poor by Robert Kiyosaki. It was the first time I ever heard of leverage in its forms, right? People, time, and money. I got obsessed, and I got obsessed with real estate. I found a local realtor, a real estate investor meetup group. And I went and I was prepared to work for free. I offered a guy who was running it if I could work for free. And he actually turned me down and said, I have zero interest in teaching the snot-nosed kid stuff. But he said, but if you're serious, call this guy out in Colorado and he can teach you everything you want. And I did. And the guy said, yeah, I can teach you everything you want to know, but it's going to cost you $10,000. And I was a sophomore in college. And unbeknownst to my parents or my friends, I sold my car and wired a stranger all my money. And we entered into a very intense mentoring relationship. And it was all about accountability. And I started reading a lot about psychology, the psychology of a sale, people need to be ready, willing, and able, right? Getting to a no is better than even pushing for a yes. Getting off the phone in 30 seconds and 60 seconds and 90 seconds because you know your LP mamas and all the other scripts you and I got really good at over the years. And as I was going through that process, part of the deal was I had to become a realtor. I didn't want to. It was never on my life plan. But he said, if you want to be a successful real estate investor, you need access to the MLS. So I get my license. The guy who turned me down had gotten the franchise for Keller Williams. So he was very interested in sponsoring me once I passed my test. And as I was in the office one day looking for rentals, because me and my landlord disagree on, reasonable volume on a Tuesday night, he said, why don't you buy a house? I said, I'm a child. I can't do that. And he said, talk to the loan officer down the hall. Turns out I had great credit because I paid off a car. And I qualified for an FHA loan. I convinced my parents to co-sign me and lend me the down payment for 8 hours. Well, then I went to settlement, got my commission, used that to pay my down payment on a 3% FHA loan. Rented out 3 rooms for $500 a piece and zero-based my mortgage. And armed with my one little script and my only transaction, I called every fraternity brother and sorority girl that would take my call and said, I need to talk to your parents about housing for next year. And my script was, for what you pay for 1 year of room and board, let me show you how you pay for your kids' tuition. And so that was my hook. It got me the appointment. And my pitch was do it FHA, 3% down, non-occupant co-borrower. And I sold them all homes between 2002 and 2004. So I got to sell them all before the market turned as well, when they all graduated. And, most of them, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to them because it not only paid for room and board, it covered all their tuition and probably the down payment on their next home. And so that, by the time I graduated college, my senior year of college, I did $306,000 of GCI as a full-time student. And I thought I was very special, and I didn't realize that I was a creature of a very unusual market. But life has a way of humbling you. And I learned in 2007, I was not that special and I was not that good. And I had bought like 14 rental properties with way too much leverage. And I learned how to do short sales on myself. I gave it all back to the bank after crying a lot. And once the boogers were dry and I made the decision I was going to stay in real estate, I actually called every top agent at Keller Williams that year and asked if I could come visit them. Because if I was going to go out in a blaze of glory, I wanted to learn some stuff on the way out. And it turned out that they were all super open and giving. And like the 6 I was able to get a hold of said, come visit me. And I also realized that they weren't any smarter than me and that they were really good at a couple things. And within, I think, 4 years of that moment, 3 years of that moment, I became the number one agent in the world for Keller. And I built a business doing REO. That's when I met you on the road. And we knocked on the biggest doors before it was a thing and said, hey, do you guys have any ugly houses you want us to sell for you? And there went the journey. So whether it was that, growing a lending business, growing a tech business, in retrospect, it all looks like this perfect process, but it's almost more of a, you scratch an itch, it works for you. It might solve the problem for others. Is it scalable? Is it not scalable? Is it long-term or is it a market of the moment? And not that one is good or bad. It's just you need to make sure you don't put all your eggs in your basket. You and I both learned that with REO. So you got to be able to pivot, make sure that any one single source of business doesn't control your business, right? You don't become beholden to any one lead source. So that's the high notes of it. I've lost a bunch of money. I've thankfully made more than I've lost, and I've learned some lessons along the way.
Dude, what a great journey, though. As I'm listening to you talk about the journey, first of all, I love the phrase radical prioritization. And I think that's a phrase that I think a lot of people need to kind of really, truly embrace, because at the end of the day, we all have the same number of hours in the day, and we get to choose what we do with those hours. And if you're going to exercise radical prioritization, guess what? You're going to have a lot better life than somebody who just kind of walks into it and does what comes, next or first, or just happens to get in their way. I also love that you did a lot of house hacking. That you're a big proponent of house hacking. That's how you got your start in real estate ownership. And I love that you were able to zero base that throughout college. That's awesome. And I love the vulnerability. And this is something that I think not a lot of people, I don't know, maybe they do. I don't know a lot of the people that are watching, maybe that know you or maybe that don't. But for those of us that know you well, I think it's important to note that you're an incredibly transparent guy. And I think that that's a really common trait I see in really high producers, right? Regardless of what type of role they're in. And I think it's that said, I think it's incredibly special when you see it in the CEO of a publicly traded company, because I think there's a lack of vulnerability and transparency in CEOs of publicly traded companies. So I think it's really a breath of fresh air that you're as transparent and as vulnerable as you are. And I love that you brought up that, hey man, like 2007, I went through some stuff, man. Like it was tough. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I had to short sell some of my own homes in order to figure stuff out. And good news is, I didn't die. Like I figured it out. I learned from it. I found some new ways to do things, and I moved on. And I think what a powerful message, because I think there's people that are probably going through some stuff right now that are probably thinking that whatever it is they're going through is the end of the world or is absolutely catastrophic. And it's going to mean that they can't get where they would like to get in their life. And so I appreciate you being transparent about that, because obviously, I mean, if you can do it, others can do it, right? And I think that other realization that you came to that really struck me in what you were just sharing was that as you learned from all these big producers, as you got to know these people that were doing all this business, you started to realize that, man, they're not any smarter than I am. They're just people that got really good at a thing or maybe two things and just did those things over and over and over again at a very, very high level. And so the one question I got for you, and it's just a very short one, would you agree that success is boring?
It's very boring. Yeah. So I think our industry does a very disservice to the agent population. We sell a dream that's not true. We say it's easy, it's flexible, come make as much money as you want. And the realities of all my friends that I grew up with doing this are the dead opposite. They're extremely systematic, they're extremely strict, and they focus on dollar productive activity over and over and over again. You were touching on something that is a concept I think about a lot, which is, but did you die?
Yeah.
Right. Like 99.9% of the things that will keep us up at night. If you fast forward the movie 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you barely remember the event that gave you anxiety and nausea and kept you up. With the exception of tragedy and loss of loved ones and that kind of stuff. I don't want to diminish real stuff like that. But professional speaking, like that one transaction, the person who threatened you, the deal that went sideways, losing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, depending on where you're at on your financial journey, is not going to kill you, right? And I feel very blessed that I've had those personal tribulations early on, like losing everything financially when you're 23 is not that big of a deal because you can literally sleep on a friend's couch. I'm grateful that I did not experience that with little ones that I need to feed, right? Because I know that is a different level of stress. And so I want to distinguish that fact that I didn't have to do that. But at the end of the day, it's, being a parent and like kids that don't actually care about the stuff I can give them. They just want me, right? So even when I've had a bad day and I'm putting them in bed and they say, I love you, Daddy. It's like, there's not much that can really stress me out business-wise. It's like, look, they're breathing. I got a roof over their head and they got a full belly and my attention. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, did you die? No, I'm here for them. And this is why I'm doing it. And I think when you recalibrate to that, it's easier to put things into context, right? I don't want to take it away from the real pain that comes with the journey. But if you can go back to why you're doing it and anchor it to that, I think it's easier to overcome some stuff and be able to just put your phone down and go, you know what, I'll deal with that fire tomorrow, right? Yeah. Pretty good example of that was last October. If you guys remember when the trial was lost, I think it was on actual Halloween, and Glenn called me and I was trick-or-treating, and he's like, did you read the news? I said, I did, but we'll talk about this tomorrow because I'm trick-or-treating with my little people, right? Like nothing's going to change right now. And like, it's still a year out and we're still not done with it. So
Yeah.
It's making sure that you're, radically prioritizing what's actually important.
Absolutely. And you've also got to understand that the things that aren't super important right now, they can either wait or just not get dealt with. You don't have to deal with every single thing in your life. There are some things it's okay to ignore. And so it's one of the things, just side note, and this is just a personal anecdote, but I don't know if you remember back in when we were traveling, we were doing all this REO travel. Speaking of not sexy, and I think everybody back then thought it was a sexy thing. We're out there, flying all over the place, meeting all these banks and asset managers and all this. And man, I got to tell you, that was a grind. I mean, you remember. And I remember one night we were staying at your place. I think it was in Alexandria. I think you had just bought the place there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you had this cat and this freaking thing. So, and speaking of sleeping on couches, you didn't even have a couch. I was sleeping on your floor that night. And there was this freaking cat, and it wasn't like a normal cat. This thing was like some psychopathic wild cat, and it terrorized me all night long. It freaked me out. Do you remember that thing? Do you guys still have that thing?
No, when my daughter was born, it got territorial, so the cat had to go.
I never thought I could be afraid of a little animal like that. And dude, I'm telling you,
it wasn't little. That was the problem.
What was that thing even? I mean,
it was an exotic breed that was crossed with a wild cat. So it was like a second, third generation. It looked like a bobcat. It was pretty cool.
It scared the crap out of me all night long. I didn't get a week's sleep that night, but I appreciated the opportunity to sleep on your floor. It was so funny. All right. That being said, let's come back to, I want to talk about a couple of things. One, building a strong real estate team. So we're going to talk about the settlement and all this other stuff. Those are on my list of things I want to go over with you. But I want to talk about teams for a minute because, back when you and I started, it was really, I'll say Chris Heller and I both had fairly large teams. You were getting a team started. There was maybe 100 people all across the country that where teams were even really on their radar at the time. Now in the last decade or two, teams have become the thing and everybody's got teams. And now you're starting to see a lot of people come back off of teams and go back to, well, maybe I just want to be a solo agent and that sort of thing. So what I want to know from you is, what do you think the future for teams is? What do you feel like teams are have a major role in the future of real estate? Do you think they're going to trend away? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been talking about the rise of super teams for 2 decades. So like I got licensed in 2002. The number one team that year at KW did like 250 deals. And I remember,
wasn't that Tom when I was coaching Tom?
No. Back in 2002.
Or you talking earlier? Oh, you're saying 2002. Sorry. Okay, you're right.
Yeah. 2002, there was like 250 deals a year, and that was massive, right? Yeah. And teams were smaller. They're like 10 people. Yeah. We've seen this progression towards bigger teams, and I think it's a factor of technology and communication, right? Once upon a time, we didn't have digital ways of staying in touch and the CRM capabilities we have today. I continue to see the rise of teams, but I have a very big caveat, and I'm not shy to say it. I think most teams are not actual teams. I think they're social clubs, or even I'll affectionately call them gang affiliations. A team, in my opinion, is a organization that grew out of lead gen. So if you are super productive with your dollar productive activities, 2-3 hours a day, you grow by servicing all those leads. And when you run out of time, you then get leverage by creating partners that can still service the leads. Because at the end of the day, the most productive thing you can do is your dollar productive activity, which is creating leads. And again, fill in the blank: cold, warm, inbound, outbound. I don't care. It's the conversion process from a prospect to a transaction. And in my opinion, teams can grow as big as they should, as long as that is it. People will come to a team for leads, training, and accountability. And I think a lot of folks do need to have an honest conversation with what it is that their life goal is. So as I was younger, I used to actually not like the label a lifestyle business. And I'm talking about like how like even the government looks at business sizing. So if you were to ask the SBA, like the IRS, there's a small to mid-sized business. and there are revenue metrics for it and how it's created and labeled. And so I think that's the decision you need to make. And I think small to mid-sized businesses in this country are some of the most amazing wealth building, but also lifestyle building opportunities. So I don't care whether you're a solo producer or the team leader of the most productive team in the country. What does your life look like? What hours do you work? What days do you have off to be with the people you care about? Do you have the system and flexibility to do what's good for your heart and soul and body, right? It's the whole experience that I think is important, right? So I don't know what's right for you, right? If getting to a leverage situation where you're in the business 4 hours a week, but still have time for your partner and your children, that's actually the goal, right? And then also creating enough excess capital to invest in as simple as an index fund or buying rental properties, but so you can get off the treadmill at its transactions, right? Teams need a lot of attention. They are intense. Not too many people successfully sell them. So they don't have a massive multiple like a tech business does. So I've always seen team as a cash machine that can fund your other investment opportunities. And so the size of the team and the structure of the team is actually a decision that you need to have with yourself and your partner as to the life you want.
It's interesting you say, I fully agree with you. And in terms of teams, I also agree that they're not for everybody, right? Being a team leader is not, it's not necessarily the be all end all of a real estate career. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some people that are uniquely suited to being team leaders, but I'd say by and large, most agents struggle as team leaders. It's not as easy as I think a lot of people think it is. And it's not necessarily the most profitable. It's not necessarily the thing that's going to provide you with the best lifestyle. And I'm not saying that it can't, but to your point, it's a vehicle to the end goal, which is invest in as much real estate as you can. For me, it's real estate. I mean, I heard you talk about index funds, but for me, it's, invest in as much real estate as you possibly can and let that be your retirement plan. But anybody that thinks they're going to retire as a real estate agent without rental properties or without investments, of passive investments of some kind, I think is frankly delusional. And so I love that you're talking about that. I also love that you're talking about what is the catalyst for growing a team, right? And it should be leads. There's really only three things real estate agents can do, in my opinion, any business can do to grow and profit. And that is lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion. Everything else is noise, right? Best service on the planet doesn't matter if you don't have lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion. So I love that you're talking about that. Now, that said, very briefly, we're seeing an explosion in what, you mentioned super teams. Last statistic I heard was that the year before last, 38 teams broke the 1,000 transaction mark, which is insane. 600. What's that?
And I have several of them with me.
Right. You do. You're absolutely correct on that. In fact, I coach several of them. And so that said, you've got also over 600 teams that 68 teams. Sorry, I got my numbers wrong. You have over 68 teams in the industry now that have broken the 600 transaction mark. And so the days, back in the day, what we were doing was by far the largest production in the country. But guess what? That's minuscule compared to what's happening now. And I think you're right about technology and its role in it. And that brings me to two things. First of all, do you see the proliferance still? Do you believe that we're going to see a proliferation of mega, and mega is probably too small, but these massive teams doing over 1,000 transactions a year? That's just short answer to that one.
I mean, I always look for directionally accurate behavior. That's what's been happening. Mm-hmm. So I don't see anything that would say otherwise. Again, I think there's always a sweet spot for every business, right? There's always, and one of the things that you and I both learned was more is not better, right? Expansion for the sake of expansion is not better. Real estate is a very straightforward business. There is X geography with X units and X people. And there's the law of diminishing returns as well. So let's just go old school direct to consumer marketing. If you look around the country, depending on the size of the total neighborhood or market, there's very few people that get to double digit market capture in a zip code in a subdivision in a town. But what I do know is there's a ceiling of capture rate, depending on how many practitioners and how much competition. And at a certain point, if you spend $1 and make $3 back, you hit diminishing returns where you spend $3 and you get $3 back. So there is a limitation to the size of a business, unless you live in a massive MSA, right? Like in San Diego, out of the top 10, we probably have 6 of them. They each do 500-600 units. But there is a a ceiling just based on total available transactions in a given market. So just a reminder, 2024 will be about 3.8 million transactions of resale and 700,000 new construction sides. That's the lowest since 1995. So, if you're struggling this year, also realize that it's the worst year we've had since 1995, worse than 08, 9, and 10, and 11.
Yep.
So to say people are going to keep growing, unless they hop to another town. And by the way, I don't suggest that for most people, right? Mm-hmm. Our number one agent in the world in 2022, 2023 is Avery Carl. She's got a very hyper niched business where she sells short-term rentals. I think she's in 20 markets, but she's got a national, amazing top of the funnel business from podcasting and books. And she's an expert in a niche. And so she's got inbound lead all over the place. And serves the Smokies, the Rockies, the Gatlinburg, like all the vacation areas. So same business model, same funnel, multiple markets is very different than, hey, I'm going to be the local expert, and then I'm going to jump to another county or another state and become the local expert. That's harder to replicate and translate. So to say, long-winded answer for, hey, is it going to grow forever? Well, there's capacity and maximum, like we are limited per country. Like if we're at 4.2% of every licensed agent in America. We have examples where I can go to 10 or 12 or 15%. No one's gone past like 12, 13%. So I can still triple or quadruple in the US. And then I can go to Canada and go to Canada. There's 28,000 agents at Rolla Page. There's 22,000 agents at Remax. There's 12,000 agents at Central Toronto. We're at 8,000. Like I'm just getting warmed up in Canada. And then I hop over to the UK and France and the 24 other countries I'm in. I'm going to continue to take market share and continue to expand. So that's how I'm expanding as a company without hitting limitations. But again, on the team side is what's your business model? Is it sustainable and profitable? Is there another market that has a similar kind of sweet spot to your offering? And does it make sense? Because the amount of agents that say, hey, I'm going to open an expansion team. I'm like, why? Go double or triple your business before you even bring this subject up to me. Unless maybe you have a Zillow Flex account and you're really, really good at that. And they want to take you to another market and they're going to give you high quality converting leads. That's a different conversation than, hey, I'm just going to go replicate myself all over the place.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. I agree. And I love that you're talking about, it's so rare to see teams or agents control a double-digit market share in a particular MSA. The reality is, most are going to cap out at 8, maybe 9%. And the really, really good ones in smaller markets, oftentimes you'll see 12, maximum you'll see is 15%. I think when somebody starts hitting that 8% threshold, I think it's time to look at, okay, how much more can I grow in my local market? And do I need to expand if I want to continue to grow? And can I do that profitably?
Yeah, no, again, at scale, I've seen the smaller the market, the bigger the market share. Like I have an agent in Texas that has a 31% market share in a lake community, second home market. But like at 31%, we're talking about how do you expand ancillary services? Because you're not going to get to 40, right?
That's right.
But if you're in DC, like no one's at 1%, like literally no one's at 1%, or San Diego or LA County or Miami, right? Where you could have multiple teams doing 200 million and everyone's fighting for like 0.8, right? Yep. 1.2. So it's very specific to the market that you're in.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so let's keep moving forward. So this is great stuff. Last question on teams is, do you see, so I'm kind of the belief that we're going to see more of these super teams, these teams that are doing over 1,000 transactions a year over the next 5 years. I anticipate, we've had in 2022 or 21, I believe it was, that 51% of every transaction in America involved one of the top 10% of teams out there. I think that number is going to go up. I think we're going to see over the next 5 years, we're going to see more of these big teams. And the reason I say that is because I think that you're seeing a consolidation. A lot of smaller teams seem to be now merging in with some larger teams that have better resources, better better technology, better support. And it's almost like, and I'm not saying teams are the new brokerage, but because obviously you need to have the brokerage for compliance, for systems, for structure. There's a lot of reasons why you need to have brokerage. Frankly, had I not been my own brokerage, I'd have saved $100 million. That's a whole other story I won't get into today. But I mean, truly, if I wasn't my own broker, I could have saved $100 million. So I'm a big believer in the brokerages. But I'm also seeing these teams really taking over the marketplace, and I feel like that's going to continue. And it sounds to me like you're kind of feeling like there's still some room for growth.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is that it's the journey, right? So I started on a team and then I became a team leader. So I think that teams are an amazing education. Again, the ones that are real based on my definitions, because you will touch on a team, on a high performing team that has good lead flow and good training. Agents doing 12, 20, 30 deals a year is not uncommon, right? So if you're brand new and you have amazing coaching and training on a high performing team, we have plenty of them. So if you ever need a recommendation, find one of ours. But if you spend 2-3 years on a high performing team and you want to then go be a solo producer, that's actually a great pathway. So I think there's always going to be the solo producer. And again, I joke on my top team leaders when we have the top single producers, right, in the room, because their net income outperforms some of our top teams. Like our number one agent in the world last year did like 3.4 million in GCI, and he's literally got like 3 employees, right? So his margin looks like software margin at like 70-80% versus a great team is probably in the 20s, low 30s, like the best performant teams, and the average teams are in the middle teens, right? So if you look at the brokerage business, the margins are between 1% and 4%. Big teams are probably in the mid teens if they're operating great. Smaller teams are 20 or 30%, and solo producers could have a 50, 60, 80% margin, right? So it depends what size pie you want. And right, 10% of 5 million is more interesting than 100% of 500,000. But is it or is it not? Because when I just said that, it's like, oh, wait a second. No, wait, that's pretty close. It is. Like, have you looked at the numbers? So where do you want the leverage, right? 10% of 5 million is almost 100% of 500,000. So what does your life look like is the question I go back to. Like, to get that 500,000, are you knocking out 99 transactions by yourself and working 12 hours a day and getting pneumonia twice a year because your body's ragged? Then that's probably not good. But at a $5 million GCI business, do you have HR problems and accounting problems and headaches? Like, you need to solve what's optimal for yourself. And there is no right answer. It's only what's good for you and your family. At the end of the day, it's like, how many hours do you want to work? How much liability do you want? Because payroll and fixed expenses for marketing spend is liability, right? So I'll say it again, bigger is not better. Optimal profit and lifestyle balance is better.
I agree. It's first of all, your numbers are spot on in terms of your profitability, in terms of what we've seen in the teams and the solo agents that we coach. But to your point, our core value at Club Wealth is no success in the world can compensate for failure in the home. And too often we see this industry chew through relationships, it chews through families, and it can only do that if you let it. If you're truly designing your lifestyle, even though you're going to get some, there's going to be bumps along the way. You're going to have 2024s. Right. You're going to have years where things don't go the way that you want them to. And don't get me wrong, we have a lot of people watching right now. I'm watching who's listening to right now. And I can tell you that there are people that are watching that are having their best year ever in 2024. But guess what? That's not always going to be the case. Remember that phrase, this too shall pass. Right. So whether it's really, really good times or it's really, really bad times, this too shall pass. So that's it. Let's get to technology for a minute. So you were the CEO, you co-founder of Remine. Changed the industry, had an 80% market share, if I'm right. Is that correct? 80%?
Yeah. So we got into business with 80 some of the top MLSs in the country, which translate by agent count about 85% market share. So at our peak, we had 1.1 million agents in America to access to our platform. Like monthly active users was like north of 200,000. And for software, that's pretty good.
That's crazy. Okay. So I think that qualifies you to talk pretty much about anything about technology and real estate, in my opinion. And what I really specifically want to talk about is, how do you feel technology is evolving in real estate? And then I want to kind of get into AI. What do you think? How do you see AI changing the landscape of our industry?
So the one thing I've consistently seen in 23 years in the industry is that technology compresses time. So The reason why we are seeing teams do 1,000 deals is because it takes less time to do one single deal. So like you and I are the old guys in the room now. We used to call on landlines. And I actually, at my KW office, would grab a form that was perforated and had a white, a yellow, and a pink. And we would press hard with a pen, and then we'd rip away. And here was the buyer's copy, and here's the seller's copy, and here's the buyer agent copy, which is unfathomable today. But you and I are that old in real estate. Mm-hmm. So when a property was listed, the fastest you could get an offer was probably like 7 to 10 days, because we stuck it in this portal that was not the modern MLS we know today. It like a screen did this, and it was a database, and we didn't have high speed internet at home. So I had to drive to the office physically to do MLS searches. And then I left, then I would give printouts to my buyers. They would circle them. They would give them back to us. We would call on a landline, leave a voicemail for an agent to then leave a landline voicemail to a seller. It would take 3 to 5 days to schedule a showing. And then once we got the showing, they would meet at the office, and I would drop off physical offers. So a hot property would sell in 2 weeks, right? High-speed internet made search at home for everyone, for the consumer. That's what gave rise to portals. High-speed internet is why we got portals. Then we put them in our pocket, right? So now a property gets listed, it gets syndicated to 400 million websites. The consumer can actually schedule a showing directly with the agent through the collaboration tools. You could be at that property within 60 minutes, 90 minutes, then you can write the offer in dot loop, sky slope, fill in your flavor of transaction management tool from your phone, digitally sign it, and you could have 11 offers the same day it lists. Technology didn't allow that 20 years ago. So that's actually why I think we have teams doing 1,000 deals. It's the collaboration, but it's all built on the technology tools. So this is how I feel about AI. This is how I feel of what I've seen in the last 23 years, and not one thing has changed. Agents that use technology will render the agents that don't obsolete. Mm-hmm. Period. Full stop. And that leads into your question about AI. Yeah. AI is, so I've seen 3 big technology shifts: high-speed internet, mobile, and now AI. I will remind everybody that 4 years ago, it was on-chain, blockchain, NFT. AI, in my opinion, is different in the sense that it is an accelerant. But I will also remind everybody, and I'm quite clear about this statement, I'm going to say, technology is vastly overrated when it first comes out and vastly underrated over the long period of time. And this is the best example I can think of. V1 of this thing 16 years ago, because we're on version 16, was an iPod that allowed you to make phone calls. It looked physically identical to this thing, right? We've changed the button placement and the apps a little bit, but in that 16-year transformation, it's gone from a novelty that played music and let me make phone calls and send a couple text messages to a remote control for my life, right? It is the car key to both my cars. It is my wallet. It is where I keep my money. It is how I unlock my Outlook, right? It is something dramatically different than what it was 16 years ago. So what I tell people is we're on version 1, guys, right? Large language models literally showed up 12 months ago in its current form of general, access. What this will do 2 years, 3 years, 10 years from now, we have not a clue. Like the people writing it don't know how it'll be used. So what I very loudly say is play with it, test it, try it, use it. Don't be afraid. I was watching a Gary V keynote on a flight recently, and he said something really impactful that I've been repeating because it's true as a sample size of 1. And I always, like, my litmus test for life is a sample size of 1. I think we vastly underappreciate our opinion as a consumer of products and services, right? Like a lot of agents will say, do you think this works? And I literally turn around and go, does that work on you? Is there a product or service that you've consumed in the last 6 months through that application or that delivery method, right? Like I open my mail over the trash can outside. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even get into my house. But I sure as hell have clicked on a bunch of stuff that Instagram knew I wanted because they're listening to my conversations, right? Product or service or, what I'm thinking about basically is what's coming through our social graphs now. But with with the Gary comment is that in 36 months and 60 months, we'll not search on Google anymore. And I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. And I started thinking of my own behavior. No, I don't search on Google anymore. I search on ChatGPT because I want contextual answers. And now there's a source tab that I may click if I want the source, or I search on YouTube, or I search on Instagram. I search, and again, that's like not better or best platform. It's wherever your attention is. If you're 17, 18, it's on TikTok and Snapchat. And if you're a boomer, it's Facebook. Like, there are communities that we spend our attention on because, the digital social media is just a digital version of community, right? Instead of hanging out at the local square, we now have that access in our phones, and more specifically with a very specific echo chamber. So like, I didn't make a Facebook until last year. And every single one of my Facebook is a real estate person versus like, I didn't make it at 18. And it kind of grew up around my college social sphere, right? Which is where most people did. But I'm a millennial, so I went straight to Instagram. But those are the differentiations, right? So I think AI will add speed and context in ways that people lack in certain holes. So personally, I'm pretty sure I'm dyslexic and I don't read or write that well. I'm very articulate orally. So for me, it's been a superpower because I can actually write whatever I'm thinking, and then ChatGPT, I specifically can make a prompt that says, keep my proofread for spelling and grammar, but keep my context. Like, I actually say, do not change my tone of voice, because you can tell when it's written by LLM. So, someone like myself that was probably less, like, I've been writing op-eds. I wouldn't have done that without this co-pilot to help me, right? Because if I have to involve some team member to help me proofread this, like, I'll just get lost in the sauce with the velocity of things I have to make decisions on. But that's just me, right? What if there's someone who's not as creative or someone who needs help organizing thoughts? We all have weaknesses and we all have strengths. So my thought process is that AI will give everyone a lift if you figure out how to apply it to wherever you need help. And so it's just like the encouragement, because I think a bunch of people will probably feel lost and not know where to start. I said, start wherever you're at and try it however you're at. So, I designed a bathroom once with it where I had a vanity spot that was smaller and needed, very specifics. And I couldn't find anything on Google for the cabinet. And I said, hey, I have 112 inches. I want a his and hers. And I want to make a vanity in the middle. And I want towel racks. And I wrote a prompt and it was pretty good, but it wasn't my style. I said, please change the feel. I want it to look like a Ritz-Carlton. And then it redid it. And then it took me 5 prompts. And that's the vanity in my bathroom, because I showed it to a carpenter. He built exactly what ChatGPT drew for me.
That's phenomenal. I love that. And I think you're right. I think AI, the more time goes by, I think the more AI is going to become a normal part of our everyday lives. In fact, I'd love to, just for some context here, I'd love everybody that's watching right now, type into the comments, like, what's the oldest real estate technology you can remember, right? I mean, like, whatever it is, what's the oldest technology you used in real estate that for a period of time especially became a mainstream?
Are you kidding? Top producer, right? And so dominated nice world once upon a time.
Are they still around? I don't even know if
they are. They're owned by Constellation and they still exist.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me that Constellation picked them up. That's actually not surprising at all. Okay, so I still got 3 more topics. We're running out of time. We only have 10 minutes. And so we got to touch on these 3 topics super fast. Okay, I'm going to tell you what the topics are, and then I want to hit them in order if we can. I want to talk about, just in general, briefly, I want to talk about coaching. I want to get your opinion on coaching. Do you feel like it's important for agents? Do you think it helps agents? Then I want to talk about the settlement, and that one we can kind of probably cover fairly briefly, but really just the go forward on the settlement. And then what I think is the next big hot button that I think most people are sleeping on, and that's the new TCPA regulations. Okay. I have confidence that you're on top of all 3 of these. So
we have 8 minutes. Yeah. Coaching is foundational. I've been coached my entire career. I think it was 6 months after passing my license, I signed up for Buffini and Company. Mm-hmm. And then I was coached by Corcoran with you. And then I was coached by Maps and Ron Sadello and a whole bunch of folks. And some of the people I'm closest to in today's world, Shep Black and Tom Ferry, like they're all coaches. And I think what people get out of coaching is accountability. You pay money to somebody and then they hold you accountable to what you said you were going to do. And there's something very impactful about telling someone you're going to do something and them holding you accountable, but that's only half of it. What I've gotten out of every coaching community, and I'm sure that's exactly what everybody gets out of being with you, is you're in the room or you're in community with people who are trying to better themselves. And that's where you and I, when I met you, you introduced me to Bob, right? And you said, Bob's coaching everyone on the top 50 in the world right now on the Wall Street Journal. And that's how I met Bob, through another high performer. So big on coaching. The settlement, I've probably been one of the loudest, most direct people about it. It was a curveball nobody expected. And I think we're relatively through it at this point. It was a bit bumpy, especially when you look at all 50 states. But the one sentence I can say about the settlement is life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. Is it fair? Absolutely not. I think those attorneys are ambulance chasers and don't give a damn about the consumer. I don't think this was about the consumer at all. I think it was a money grab. But a settlement's a settlement. There are new rules in place. And the only question people need to ask themselves is, do you still want to be a market participant? And by the way, this is no different than Dodd-Frank and CFPB if you were in the lending business 10 years ago. Anytime there's new regulation where it's federal or a settlement from litigation, you have the choice. You have the beautiful choice of saying, I still want to do this, or I don't want to do it anymore. And if the answer is you want to do it anymore, there's new rules of engagement according to your state, your MLS, your association, your brokerage, right? Like I made some rule changes. And you can choose to be a market participant or not. And so the thing that I want to emphasize for people is it's not about us, right? I think there's a whole lot of inside baseball of terminology and being right or being wrong. At the end of the day, we're helping families make the single largest decision of their life. And so how do we guide them through that process with the least amount of confusion and breakage? And that's where we came up and wrote our own agreements midsummer and said, we are actually going to start from scratch. And we literally sat down with myself and Holly Mayberry and Jim Bramble and our legal team and our brokerage ops team and said, look, this is a blank sheet of paper. What's actually legal enforceable in a buyer representation agreement? And we made it one page. And actually, when we were done with the first draft, I'm like, is this actually enforceable? Because we had like meeting of the minds and the definition of a contract is very clear. And we just, threw away all the legalese and all of the CYAs. As you see contracts throughout this country, they like my funny comparable is it's the don't use the toaster in the shower disclaimer. It's because somebody did it once, right? So we just had to throw it all away, start from scratch, and put ourselves in the consumer's shoes. Like if I was a buyer and you're shoving some contract in my face after we've talked for 2 minutes on the phone and you're going to say, hey, by the way, sign this terrifyingly looking 12-page contract. That's not cool. That's not okay. That doesn't feel good. So we wanted to make it consumer first and consumer friendly and put ourselves in the consumer's shoes and make strong decisions like, hey, I think this broker to broker thing is the crux of the litigation and the accusation. So we're just not going to participate anymore. That doesn't mean sellers aren't allowed to offer compensation. And again, like midsummer when I said it was blasphemy and it trended. And now, I don't know, most states are mandating it and doing away with broker to broker and deleting it from their vocabulary and their paperwork. So I think I did not like it. I still stand by that. I don't think we did anything wrong as an industry, but I always look at the silver lining in anything. It forces a conversation about compensation and the services we render in exchange for it. So that I do like. I like the fact that we actually explain what we do and how we get paid and the value we deliver. So
I think you just nailed it on the value piece. I think that if there's one thing I love out of this settlement is that it's forcing us to show buyers the value we're bringing buyers instead of it being, we go in and we apply for the job as a listing agent, but that hasn't been the case for most people with their buyers. And now it's forcing that conversation and people are learning how to articulate their value much better.
Absolutely. So, and my ADD prevents me from remembering the third question. So we got 3 minutes.
TCPA.
TCPA. So yes,
Yeah.
we were front and center. That's a modification through the FTC. We actually met with them in DC through some of our agents and explained what agents do. The short answer is I think companies that blast leads to multiple people are going to go out of business, right? So just I won't say the
That's
name.
a lot of big companies. You're talking the
multiple people.
okay.
Right? You give the same lead to multiple people because it's going to be chain of custody of lead. Right. So, the ones I know intimately well, Zillow is exempt because they give the lead to a single person and there's an agreement and a referral agreement in between both parties. And that will pass the sniff test because I was part of a lot of the conversations. All of the internal lead gen agents do passes the sniff test. It's the companies that blast it to 10 people and do jump ball and they're not in the same business unit, right? Like you can do jump ball on your team because it's the Michael Hellickson team. Right. But it's different than like Michael Hellickson, Keller Williams, Remax, eXp. That's not going to exist anymore.
It's interesting. I was talking to, you're friends with James Dwiggins, as I understand. And by the way, I need to get you and he and Mike Bernier and a couple others on a conversation about this. I think this is, I think it's got the potential to not just to disrupt the real estate industry, but I think it has the potential to have a ripple effect through any sales organization, because it's going to change how we use AI. I think it's going to change how. In terms of AI for follow-up, I think it's going to change how we text people. I think it's going to have impact on how we call people and what systems we can use for that. But to your point, I think who they're really after are the folks that are the lead aggregators that are selling these leads to multiple people.
It goes back to the consumer experience. It's a shit computer. Like I've signed up for something where I had 20 people call and harass me. That's not cool.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody wants that. I don't think anybody wants that. And so that being said, I know we're out of time and I want to be respectful of your time. But at the end of the day, guys, we're going to be doing a webinar here soon. Leo, I'm going to invite you to, I don't know if you're going to have time to do it or not, but I know James will be one of the participants in that, where we're going to be talking about TCPA. We're going to go deep on that topic and really talk about the things that you guys need to know about it, what you don't, what you need to be concerned about and focused on, and what you don't need to be super worried about. And so I would invite you guys to be part of that. But to give it up for Leo, guys, in the comments, if you would, please hit share, hit like, give us some emojis. Tell us if you've got any other questions for Leo. I'm sure he'll be able to see this feed now that he actually has a Facebook account. And which I think it's hilarious that you didn't even have one until a year ago. And you owned one of the most impactful tech companies in real estate. That's phenomenal. And Leo, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Thanks for having me. It's always fun. And it's the same stuff. I don't care whether I was a solo agent, a team leader, or running this company. It's making your phone calls, staying in touch, closing, follow up, and keeping your word.
Yeah. And it really, I'm glad you said it that way, because it really, all the stuff we've been talking about, those are all just ways to deliver better service. Those are all just ways to, it's just what we do hasn't changed. The tools and technologies that we use to do it continually evolves. But I gotta wrap it up with this, Leo. Cannot be. Go ahead.
No, I got to go. I'm late for another call. So it was
gotcha. All right.
I got to jump. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leo. Take care, guys.
Bye.
All right. So as Leo leaves, everybody, I just want to encourage you to check out, and by the way, we're brand agnostic at Club Wealth. I'm going to recommend you guys check out eXp Realty and what's going on down there. Leo's done an amazing job with that in his time already as CEO. And guys, we get the opportunity to talk to some really powerful people, and I want to encourage you to continue to watch. So recommend people. If you've got somebody that you think that we should interview on Club Wealth TV, put it in the comments. I would love to reach out. We've been interviewing CEOs of major real estate companies recently, especially. We just did James Dwiggins, as you guys know, from Next Home, 630 offices with over 6,000 agents. And we've got more to come. So put those names in the chat. Thank you guys very much for participating, for making your comments here, and for sharing this. I super appreciate it. You guys have an awesome day. And Shelly, I love it. I think it's awesome that you're with eXp, by the way. I think it's fantastic. I got Cody on here. I love it. I see all you guys. And let's see, Steve Duran saying, Leo rocks. He's a great leader. Yeah, dude, he is. He's a super good guy. I got to tell you, it was a good time when we traveled for REO. We spent a lot of time in cars driving from one bank to another. And I got to tell you, man, we kind of grew up in this industry together, and it was just crazy. Some of the experiences that I can't share with you, but that really kind of kind of shaped our careers. And what a great time. And yes, Edgar, this will be on YouTube. It's not yet, but it will be on YouTube. We're going to go ahead and clean the audio up, clean the formatting up. And we'll get it reposted to all the podcast outlets, to YouTube, obviously Spotify, et cetera. So it'll definitely be on all those. And and Cody, you get a shout out too, brother. I'm glad you're watching. I'm glad you're commenting, man. I super appreciate it. If you guys have any questions for me, throw them in the chat, and I'll certainly respond to as many of the comments as I can. I'm still trying to catch up for yesterday's webinar. We had a 4-hour webinar yesterday. Had 480 some odd comments on that thing. I'm still trying to respond to them all. So I'll do the best I can to catch up with you guys, but have an awesome day, everybody. Super appreciate you being on. And please, again, give us a like, give us a follow. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Club Wealth is the only coaching company on the planet that will literally guarantee that you will double your income or make at least an extra $100,000 your first year coaching with us, or we will give you 100% of your investment back. Click the link below, sign up for the appropriate tier level, and let's get you a strategy session today. And I promise you, I 100% guarantee you, promise you that you will walk away with a heart full of gratitude for the time that we took for you, because you got so much value out of that call. Schedule your strategy session today. I promise you'll be glad you did.